Welcome into Winnipeg Sports Talk. My name is Connor Hrabchak. In a moment, I'll be joined by Lyss Houde, and together we're doing our Team Canada roster projection for the upcoming 2026 Olympic Games. We did this last year going into the Four Nations, and you guys really enjoyed it. And, there's so many great options for Team Canada this year. So we thought, why not do it again? The team will be named December 31st, New Year's Eve. Canada's going to reveal their roster. We're recording this the morning of December 22nd. So there will be some games between now and then. But the information we have right now, we're going to debate our rosters for Team Canada. Thanks for joining us. Let's bring in Lyss Houde. And Lyss, let's start maybe with the locks on this team, and we can get kind of into our philosophy once we talk about the players that we're actually adding to the team. But the players that have already been named: Connor McDavid, Sam Reinhart, Nathan MacKinnon, Sidney Crosby, Braden Point, and Cale Makar. Shout out to Puckpedia for their Puck GM tool, allowing us to build this Team Canada roster. But Lyss, just off the top, what do you think of the players that were named? Obviously, they're all amazing. They're all superstars. But it gives Canada a good building block, especially with four centers. Not all of them will play center, I don't think, but four centers to start off with.
Yeah, that was always Canada's huge competitive edge over a lot of the teams kind of coming into the Olympics, but also the Four Nations last year, is that high-end center depth is just off the charts. So this shows exactly that. I think that the whole, McDavid, MacKinnon, Crosby, Makar, I think I kind of put those four guys in terms of like their current output, their current perception, all this different stuff. They kind of feel like they're in a different sort of category to me. But once we start going outside of this, and I'm sure people will pick this up as we go through, this was a harder exercise than I thought it was going to be. I've obviously had so many, mental thoughts about this roster and everything, and I'll see a roster and I'm like, oh, that guy shouldn't be on it or whatever. But sitting down and actually doing it, the amount of like number two forwards on this team is just out of this world. Like, it's so insane. So it's going to be really fun to kind of go through it and explain our thought processes.
It is. And before we start adding players here, I do just want to give, a quick little disclaimer on our thought process, at least for our rosters. You and I do have a lot of players that we agree on, and we'll obviously get to that. But we do have some players at the edge of our lineup that we disagree on, and we'll obviously get to that as well. But what was kind of your mindset putting together your roster? Because some people just take the 12 best players and don't even think about it. Some people say, well, your fourth line has to be filled with penalty killers and all of these things. Are you leaning more towards taking some specialized role players, or just 12 best players, put them on the ice and go win gold, and it's as simple as that? Or how did you kind of throw it together?
I think I kind of looked at it with both kind of perspectives, and at the end of the day, if given the choice where you had to go between the 12 best players available or selecting very specific role players, I'm leaning on the former, just because I do think it is important to bring really skilled, talented players to this tournament. But I think the margin of difference between what people consider to be best is so small, with the top, 18 forwards in the conversation for this team, that I think in order to differentiate, that's when I started getting down to role a little bit more. I'm not going role outside of who I consider to be the top 25 Canadian forwards or whatever, anything like that. But I think kind of within that grouping, I kind of took best players available for my pool of guys I wanted to pick from. And then I started looking at kind of their specialized skill sets a little bit more, some complementary pieces, some player history that I thought could be really interesting and stuff like that. So I'm a little bit of both minds with it, but I think that there's just so much high-end talent there that you can afford to start looking a little bit more specialized at what these players bring to the table.
Absolutely. I'm with you on that. So let's get into, the roster. Lyss and I both put together rosters separately, and there's a lot of players that we have consensus on both of our teams. So we'll get into those first. And let's start up front, Lyss, where Canada has its biggest advantage. You have the best forward core in the tournament, and there's no doubt about that. Really, no matter who you take out of all the players on the bubble, and it is largely because of all the locks that we talked about, the players that are already on the team. But let's get into some additions here. So on both of our rosters, we just added Mitch Marner, Macklin Celebrini, Connor Bedard, and Brad Marchand. So Brad Marchand obviously was on the Four Nations team, so was Mitch Marner. Marner made the pass to McDavid for the win. But the kids both make it up front on both of our teams lists, and that being Macklin Celebrini and Connor Bedard. Celebrini, who is third in the NHL in scoring right now with 54 points in 36 games. And Bedard did just get hurt, has missed the last couple of games. It doesn't sound like something that'll keep him out long term, and talking about into the Olympics. And before he got hurt, he had 44 points in 31 games. So two players, 19 years old, Lyss, haven't really played in these big cup championship games that Canada seems to favor. They like the Stanley Cup experience on a lot of these players. But to me, I don't know what you think, Bedard being 20, Celebrini being 19, they just played way too good in the first couple months of this season to ignore them for this roster.
Yeah, I think certain players kind of had to play their way onto this roster, and other players had to play their way off of it. So I think that guys like Celebrini and Bedard absolutely had to play their way kind of onto it. Guys like Marner, I think, kind of had to play their way off of it. And I wouldn't say that, if Marner didn't have the regular season body of work that he does in his career, that this year, like, he's been good with his new team and everything like that. But I think that he's just so established and widely respected as such a fun, dynamic, great player that I think he kind of falls into that category of, he didn't play his way off of this team by any means. I think that he's been fine this year, but he's been doing exactly kind of what they need him to do, kind of racking up those assists, a little bit more of that creator role, but the high-end creator role that I think is so desperately needed on a team that's full of guys who are incredible at scoring goals, individual efforts, all those different things. It's a great complementary piece. So he's, I think, a huge part of this team as well.
Yeah, 100%. And I do want to give a shout out before we move on to the rest of the players to Brad Marchand, who at 37 years old, Lyss, has 40 points in 34 games, 20 goals.
What a freak.
Like, the guy's not slowing down.
What a freak.
And he was a player that after the Four Nations, I was thinking, okay, maybe that was the last ride for him. He's slowing down a little bit. He's older. He's 37. At the Four Nations specifically, he didn't, blow the doors off. He was good in especially a bottom six role, but he was so good in the playoff run for Florida last year, and now he's following it up with more this year that I just feel like that's pretty incredible stuff from Brad Marchand.
He had to play his way onto my team at the beginning of this season.
Me too.
I know he was on the Four Nations team, but I didn't have him kind of as either a lock or someone that I was even kind of considering, because like you said, that the fall off, how quickly it can kind of come at that age, like no one gets the benefit of the doubt for me. But Sidney Crosby, Brad Marchand, they tend to be in the league of their own with defying the aging curve here. So yeah, he's absolutely earned his way onto my team as well.
100%. He has been so good for a Florida team that's making a surge here. They started a bit slow. They're going to get Matt Tkachuk back at some point too. And Brad Marchand has been playing, on the top line, 40 points. He's been awesome. Let's round out our starting 12, and then we have extras coming because Canada is taking 14 forwards, if I'm not mistaken, to the Olympics. So that's 2 extra forwards. But to round out the top 12, I moved Braden Point over to the wing and added a fourth line of Brandon Hagel, Nick Suzuki, and Tom Wilson, who, consensus, all 3 of those guys were on both of our rosters, and all 3 of those guys made up the fourth line on our roster list. And I think that was very intentional by both of us, because the dog per 60 for all 3 of those players is just through the roof. I mean, Brandon Hagel, he made the Olympic team for me, fighting to start the game Saturday night, Bell Center. He's fighting Matt Tkachuk in that Four Nations game. Like, I want that guy on my team. He's a great penalty killer, can play in all situations, has skill too, puts up points. Like everyone on this roster, Canada, you're not taking bad hockey players. Tom Wilson's been great for Washington this year. He was a guy coming into the year where, people wanted him for the physicality and the size, but he's, done very well and like abnormally well for him offensively. Like, he's done better offensively than his normal career pace. And then Nick Suzuki has been amazing for the Montreal Canadiens on their top line, playing in all situations, playing that defensive style too. I think this is a fourth line you could put out there, and they're going to hound the opposition, not burn you defensively, and all 3 of them have the skill to add offense if there's an opportunity to do so.
For sure. I think that this fourth line is so fun because it takes players that fall into this best player available category, but it really kind of leverages their skill set. I think Tom Wilson is a guy that everyone would have wanted to have if you could justify it a little bit more, if you could justify leaving other guys at home for him in the Four Nations or other tournaments kind of like this. This time around, last year we saw that in goal scoring was kind of hard to find in the Four Nations and all this sort of stuff. And if you had a guy who was going around laying hits or whatever, and you had left, these electric goal scorers at home, if, you end up losing that game, that's one of those things that you circle and kind of look back in hindsight and you're like, was that worth it? Right. And I think that right now, why not have both? Right. This guy could hit 30 goal or 20 goals before the new year. Right. Like he's kind of in a not new stratosphere, because I think he had over 30 goals last year. Like he's definitely always had a little bit of that offensive, power, and that's what makes him such a fun player. Like he's known across the league for, the big hits and all that sort of stuff, but he's just such a fun, not unicorn-esque, but borderline player type because of how capital A, capital G actually good at hockey he is. So it's really cool to kind of see that player profile getting weaved into this lineup, because I think it brings a lot of good into the lineup and not at the expense of what you need to win hockey games.
Yes, I'm with you on that 100%. And Tom Wilson, I also think, has the reputation for the hits and more notably the dirty hits from earlier on in his career. But recently he's toned it down a little bit and gotten, throwing more clean hits, still throwing massive hits. I mean, you tune into a Washington Capitals game, you're going to see Tom Wilson crush a guy. And yeah, so far this season, 34 points in 36 games, 17 goals for Wilson. Brandon Hagel, 31 points in 32 games. Again, you're not taking bad hockey players here. All of these players have skill, can penalty kill. They play all situations on all of their teams, but this fourth line, especially, very defensively responsible and one that Canada can put out there and really trust in all situations list. Now we get to the part where we're debating a little bit. We have disagreements on, we have the consensus players. Maybe some of those players aren't in the starting 12 for us of our roster, but those are the players that made our team for every, single roster spot up front. And here's where we disagree. You have Wyatt Johnston on your roster, and I have Mark Scheifele on mine. So make the case for Wyatt Johnston making Team Canada, and then I'll make the case locally here on Winnipeg Sports Talk for Mark Scheifele. I think that might be a layup for me, but go ahead.
Okay. So I think that obviously as Winnipeg locals here, we watch a lot of Central Division hockey, and I've been really interested in Wyatt Johnston's career ever since he was kind of in his junior years, and he's a really fun player. And I feel like what he's developed into at the NHL level is really interesting and really valuable to this team. When everyone is talking about kind of the youth making the team, I want to tell you something really interesting. Wyatt Johnston is 22 years old. I think a lot of people often forget how young Wyatt Johnston is. Wyatt Johnston, and I know we're about to fight about Mark Scheifele on this, so I had a feeling this was coming. I felt like these were going to kind of be down to the wire ones here. Mark Scheifele and Wyatt Johnston are 10 years apart. Mm-hmm. Mark Scheifele has 3 less playoff games than Wyatt Johnston had. Wyatt Johnston has played in 56 playoff games in his career at the age of 22 years old, and Mark Scheifele has played in 53. Wyatt Johnston gets incredibly tough matchups, especially for a 22-year-old. Mm-hmm. He's right-handed, and I also think that a massive, massive part of what his value proposition is the type of player that he is, which is a scoring chance generating machine. There are so many players in this team that have finishing talent. There's so many players in this team that can get into good areas and all that sort of stuff. But he has a very versatile offensive profile. He creates scoring chances in a way that I feel like very few other players do. Mm-hmm. He is not a fast puck transporter who comes in. He kind of in the aggregate has really strong numbers in both rush offense creation, but also kind of that like half court pressure offense as well. But the fact that he is so good at creating scoring chances without being a transporter, I think is so important. This is going to be a really tight checking tournament. And the fact that he has so many one-touch passes under his belt to get pucks into dangerous areas for guys like Mikko Rantanen when they're out there playing against tough competition, I think that's a skill set that Canada needs to have either in their lineup or waiting in the wings, because I think the ability to actually generate offense when there's not going to be a lot of room to do it, the ice is going to close up a little bit like it does in the playoffs. I think that's going to be massive for the team, and I am going to fight for this guy to be on Team Canada because I think he'll be an absolutely stellar addition to the group.
this is the thing with Team Canada as well, and you make some awesome points, and it's like I'm not going to argue against what you said about Wyatt Johnston. He's a great player, like
The
it's hard
question is, does someone else have something more that's better?
exactly.
Not is Wyatt Johnston bad?
It's hard for me to be like,
I get
you're
you.
wrong. Wyatt Johnston sucks. It's like, well, no, that's just not not true. But I'll make the case for Mark Scheifele. I think, you bring up those playoff games that he's played, and it's actually remarkable that Wyatt Johnston has already played that many games. But Mark Scheifele, we saw what he did in 2017. We saw what he's done last year as well with the Winnipeg Jets in the first 2 rounds. He's awesome in the playoffs, and I think that tighter style of hockey, when it's more physical and all of those things, he's great at protecting the puck. I think that's Mark Scheifele's kind of separating skill set as an offensive player, separating the puck and then making that pass into the middle of the slot, finding open areas in the middle of the slot to shoot. We've talked a lot on Winnipeg Sports Talk for months and years, really, that when Mark Scheifele is on and he's shooting the puck a ton, he is a far more dangerous player. If he went to Canada for the Olympics and he was on a shooting tear and really on a mission, and that driven Mark Scheifele that we've seen the past number of years, I do think that he could be a real asset to this team. Now, I still don't know if he makes my starting 12, but if a top 6 player goes down or there's an injury in the entire lineup, I think he's a player that can really complement skill well, like Crosby and McKinnon and McDavid. Like, I'm not saying Wyatt Johnston can't do that, but Mark Scheifele's puck protecting skills, his passing ability, and ability to run a power play unit as well. You have so many guys on Canada that can do that, but maybe on the second power play, he's in the bumper, he's on the wing, he's down below the goal line. He's really versatile offensively too. And this season, he has been shooting the puck more than he has in the last year. He's on pace for nearly 100 points, 99. He's got 17 goals so far this season. I don't know, Liz. Both of these players rock. Both of them have separating skill sets. I would take Mark Scheifele for kind of that puck protecting ability that I think could be very, very valuable for a team that, wants to hold the puck in the offensive zone, wants to generate a ton of offense. And Mark Scheifele can play off the rush too, does a great job moving defenders with his eyes and making great passes and hitting players in stride. And if that player striding down the wing is Connor McDavid, that could be very, very beneficial for Canada. So I'd take Mark Scheifele, you take Wyatt Johnston. People in the chat can let us know, but again, this is Winnipeg Sports Talk. I'm sure you're going to be taking Mark Scheifele. But again, that is a conversation that Canada will be having for sure, because they're so close together in terms of skill and talent, and a lot of these players are. But let's go back to the forward core. The 2 players we didn't mention, Seth Jarvis and Mark Stone. Now, Seth Jarvis went crashing into the post a few games ago, and Rod Brindamore, the head coach of the Carolina Hurricanes, said that he would be out a while. I don't know how long a while is in terms of, February, early February, but I would take Seth Jarvis. Lyss had Mark Stone on her roster, but if Seth Jarvis is hurt, I would take Stone as well. I think that would be my natural replacement for me. Stone, great puck battler, steals so many pucks in the neutral zone defensively, kind of a Selke level forward. If you want to look at his career that way, and he's built up a career of doing that. Seth Jarvis, more of like the Brandon Hagel type, can play with skill, can do really everything, but is a great penalty killer, great forechecker, and all of those things. So I see those players kind of in the same light. And if Jarvis, who was on the Four Nations team, so was Stone, but I would take Jarvis. If he's not able to make it, you take the Manitoban, you take Mark Stone, and that's our Team Canada kind of forward.
You take the Manitoban. Holy smokes.
For both, I guess for both. You're taking the Manitoban regardless. Yeah.
No, I think the only thing I want to say about Mark Stone to kind of like defend his case a little bit more is I think that you talk about if a forward goes down, the Mark Scheifele argument, I think that applies a little bit more to Mark Stone. I'm not saying that Seth Jarvis can't hang with the top end guys, but he falls a little bit more into the Brandon Hagel, Nick Suzuki. Like if you could have 4 guys on that line with Tom Wilson down there, I think that that's kind of where he slots in. But I think that Mark Stone, since he's been back from injury, like get out of town, that this guy has 27 points this year in 18 games. Like he's already cooking, and most of them are assists, right? He is passing that puck like there's no tomorrow. Fun fact, no PIMs this year either. So he's going out there, holding on to that puck, setting all these things up, whatever. And he's controlling that play a lot more and staying super disciplined. And, his numbers are kind of great to start this year, even though he hasn't played the full season. He's a guy that when he's on is one of the most dominant players in the league. And I know that, the earlier part of his 30s is behind him by now, but I think that he's a guy who, if you needed to pop someone up to create a little bit of offense in the dire moments, kind of with the McDavids, the Crosbys, the McKinnons, whoever of the world. Like, that's a guy that I trust to go out there and make some insane plays to kind of get Canada back into something or to create a lead that they're able to defend.
Yeah, and I think it took us how long? Like almost 20 minutes. But I'm finally going to mention the size of the ice. It being 3 feet shorter, I don't really think is going to make much of a difference at all. But if it did, I think Mark Stone would be a guy that would benefit from it. You know, he's not the fastest. He's not Connor McDavid.
Wyatt Johnston too. Wyatt Johnston too.
There you go. I don't think it'll make much of a difference. But like I said, if it was going to, I think Mark Stone is like the perfect guy for that because he's so great in puck battles, steals so many pucks, and he's not the fastest straight line speed guy. Like, I think that was a big complaint of his coming from fans from the Four Nations, is that he struggled to play with the pace, play with the McDavids on the top line, all of those things. So I'm here for Mark Stone. I'm here for Seth Jarvis. Both very similar players in my eyes. And Mark Stone, like you said, since coming back from injury, has been awesome. So Canada can't really go wrong there. Let's move to the defense corps. Cale Makar is in, and some more consensus picks from us. Devon Toews is going to play with Cale Makar. Great. I think he'd make this team regardless, but the chemistry just makes it so natural, so easy to just plop those guys on the top pair and play them 23 minutes a night against the top competition. Josh Morrissey, as we know here in Winnipeg, is an absolute lock for this roster, absolute stud, maybe having the best season of his career. He's putting up offense, the defense is there, so like the metrics are just pointing all up for Josh Morrissey, up even further from where he was last year. And this guy is a Norris candidate year in and year out. Shea Theodore for Vegas. We have him playing right shot defense because we have a lot of lefties on this roster. I think Canada has a lot of lefties as well. But Theodore, another great puck transporter, can really do it all situations type of defenseman. And this top four, all four of these guys can really move the puck. And when you have Canada and you have the talent you have up front, I think you need to build your defense core, at least the top of it, like the top four, based off of guys that can move the puck up the ice, skate really well, jump up into the rush if need be, and you can just skate teams out of the building. I think that's where this kind of philosophy comes from for me with this top four list. Anything you want to say on the locks we have for defense? Josh Morrissey's
these guys
praises.
rule.
These guys
rule. I don't even know what to tell you. It's so funny at these the beginning parts of these roster videos where it's like, these are some of the best defensemen in the National Hockey League. Like, obviously they make the team. Like, that's just, it's unreal. And yeah, I think you're totally right that their skill sets are there. And a lot of these guys, though, the other thing that's, I think, really important with them is a lot of them are out there on their respective NHL teams when the team is defending a lead and there are 6 players on the ice for the opposition and they're out there defending. Like, these guys can do it all. So
yeah, I'm with you. Like, they're all so talented, can move the puck, and they're not going to burn you in those scenarios for sure. Let's get to our next 2, not locks, but consensus picks on our rosters. And I think I'll ask Lyss about this. We have Matthew Scheifele and Thomas Harley. So the 18-year-old makes our team, Matthew Scheifele. All 3 of the kids, Bedard, Celebrini, Scheifele, they have played so well in the first couple of months. I don't think you could leave them off this roster. Would you have Harley in over Scheifele if you were playing? I would. Just because Matthew Scheifele, I think, is the perfect 8th defenseman for this team, where if someone went down, immediate plug-and-play game breaker, kid that doesn't know any better, go out and just play your game. But at the same time, what's the biggest game he's ever played in? You know, like if he's in the gold medal game and he's a regular and he's on the 3rd pair and being counted on to kill penalties and all of these things, I don't see that. So maybe I'd flip these guys and put Harley in over Scheifele, because I think Schaefer is kind of the perfect 8th defenseman for this team. Plug him in if someone gets hurt and just hope he continues that lightning in a bottle that he's had for the first couple months here.
Yeah, I won't be mad if Matthew Scheifele doesn't see a ton of ice in this tournament or anything like that. I think it falls into that category of it's great experience and it's great for him, whatever. But again, not at the expense of leaving someone better at home. And so we have, a couple other guys that we're going to have to get to here. But I think that, when you start ranking the defensemen in this National Hockey League who have Canadian passports, like, holy smokes, I think that he's up there with the best of them and he can hang, and he's shown repeatedly that he can hang. The amount of minutes that this guy is playing in the National Hockey League with the type of team that he's on right now. I know that the Islanders are doing well and it's mostly because of him, but they're not, this isn't the Colorado Avalanche or Dallas Stars by any means and stuff. So I agree with you in the whole idea of what's the biggest game he's ever played in. But at the end of the day, I look at the sample of how this year has started out for him, and every single night he goes out there and rocks 27 minutes against, unbelievable teams of men, right? And as an 18-year-old, he's able to hang for, the entirety of those games. There have been moments here and there where he's gotten burnt or this, that, whatever. That happens to every single defenseman in the league. Cale Makar got burnt by Morgan Barron like 3 days ago, and it was hilarious. And does that mean that Morgan Barron is a better hockey player than Cale Makar? Does that mean Cale Makar is not the best defenseman in the National Hockey League? No. So I think that Matthew Scheifele has shown incredible maturity and poise for an 18-year-old, and he's been such a good defenseman that, you could almost talk about his output in Norris conversations as much as Calder conversations, right? Like, that's how good he's been this year. And I'm not saying he's going to be a Norris candidate, but you understand what I'm saying.
100%. Let's get to some of the bubble players for our defense core. And correct me if I'm wrong, Lyss, but you have Drew Doughty on your roster as well. I do as well. I have him on that third pair playing with Thomas Harley. And then we have one spot left, and we have another debate in terms of who we would both take. I would take Colton Parayko. He was on the Four Nations roster, played with Josh Morrissey actually in the top 4 in that tournament. You would take Jacob Chychrun, who is having an unbelievable season for the Washington Capitals. I'm not doubting that. He has been truly awesome, and I do think he's on Canada's radar. I wouldn't be shocked if they take him over Schaefer, a more experienced guy, and Chychrun, obviously older, 27 years old. But maybe Doughty he was on the Four Nations team. He's been on Canada forever. Penalty killer, veteran, cup experience, all of those things. I think he's more of a lock than people want to think for Team Canada. Like, I think he's on that team for sure for all of those things because they value all of those things, and they should. And Drew Doughty should absolutely be on this team in my eyes. What's the case for Jacob Chychrun? And then I'll make the case for Colton Parayko for this final spot.
Yeah, I think Jacob Chychrun's a little bit of a different player than I remember when there was the first bit of smoke around him when I think it was when he was going to get traded from Arizona and all this different stuff. And people started talking about him the same way they talk about other defensemen who are really, really good at hockey. He's a great puck mover, and you got to stop you right there. He's a bit of a different player, and he's the type of guy that obviously right now he's in a little bit of a mini offensive explosion, but he has a lot of great offense and everything like that. But I'm a little bit more interested in kind of his ability to break up pucks in his own zone and just kind of bring a little bit of a different defensive mindset, bit of a different defensive skill set to this roster, but also having kind of the forward-esque offensive finishing ability and kind of some of that chance creation that I talked about being so important when I talked about Wyatt Johnston. He does something similar kind of with his skill set, great shot assists, all this different stuff. But I think that he's also the type of guy that I really trust to kind of break up those odd man rushes, win those puck battles along the boards, those types of things that I have a feeling you're going to say something similar about Colton Parayko in that regard, just because you need guys who are able to kind of do that. But I think, again, if it comes down to 2 guys and one of them is also going to be able to shoot the lights out and not necessarily just a volume shooter, but a guy who can score goals too, but also is one of the league best at retrievals. This guy's had such a great year. And I was also looking at, just out of curiosity, Washington's, results with him and Wilson on the ice together, and they've been really good this year. They're controlling all of their scoring chances, all of their high danger chances, all their expected goals battles, even though they don't play a ton together. I have a feeling that if Chychrun played the role that I would expect him to if he made this team, as well as Tom Wilson, that they would see a little bit of ice together, and they've had really strong results as a pairing as well. So that's my case for Jacob Chychrun. I think he's been awesome this year.
He really has. And I'll say this on the Chychrun versus Parayko. If I was starting a franchise today kind of thing, or I needed to win one game, I'm taking Chychrun over Parayko. This is my most specialized skill set pick on my roster for Colton Parayko. I think the size and the penalty killing ability is something that Canada really, really needs. And you look at Chychrun, yeah, like you said, I think he kind of gets mischaracterized in being this, specialized puck mover and really offensive-minded guy when he's really an all-around guy. But I think Colton Parayko would be kind of in a third-pair role, kind of like Drew Doughty, and would be more of that shutdown type, would bring a bit of size. And he's a good skater for his size and is the kind of player that isn't going to burn you in terms of getting the puck up the ice. I talk about, it's just skating teams out of the building. He's a plus puck mover. He can do that. He's not Jacob Chychrun level of offensive gift, but I think this is my most specialized pick in terms of you just need a penalty killer. You need some size on your back end when you're going up against Team USA and all of those things. And I think Parayko filling in, you have Scheifele. It was like Scheifele or Chychrun for me, and I could honestly go either way on that one. But the other guy had to be Parayko just for that specialized skill set. But the Scheifele is kind of the offensive game breaker type. And I think, to me, it feels redundant to take both Scheifele and Chychrun, whereas Parayko, is a fill-in for Doughty, and then if you really need to play this defensive style, you put him in. So a little bit of roster building, specialized role. Like I said, if I one game for my life, I'm probably taking Chychrun over Parayko as just a defenseman, but this is just a specialized role pick in Colton Parayko. So I don't know, Jacob Chychrun, Colton Parayko, we'll leave them both there, just kind of swapping in and out. We'll put one in the press box when we put our final roster together list. Let's get to the goalies. This one we usually spend the least amount of time on just because, well, Canada's goalies aren't that good to start. But let's go straight to the Jordan Binnington conversation. We both have Logan Thompson on our team in terms of, the starting goalie. Correct me if I'm wrong. He's your starter as well. He's my starter. Jordan Binnington is on both of our rosters as well. And then I have Mackenzie Blackwood and you have Darcy Kemper in terms of goaltending. Kemper's won a cup. I'd be totally fine with them taking him as well, especially if it's their third goalie or backup. But the Jordan Binnington conversation, you still take him? He's still on your roster, even though, what is it this year, an 880-ish save percentage?
He's had a bad year. But I also think of who the GM of the team is and what the likelihood is, and also just the whole concept of this big game goalie. And hey, who knows? Maybe after that game 7 against Winnipeg, the perception about this player has changed. I don't know what your order was that you had, but I had him as my third goalie. I think that he's a guy that I'd want to pull in kind of to start a game if I think I really needed to, as opposed to Darcy Kemper. I think that I would plug him in, at the end of a second period if things just aren't going well or whatever, for Logan Thompson. So I have him as my third goalie. But like, if I was the GM of this team all by my lonesome and, didn't have any pre-existing XYZ, like I probably wouldn't take Jordan Binnington on my team. But this one's just kind of like it borders on the realism pick as well, where I just think that he's kind of been synonymous with this grouping since the beginning, and it was almost never in question for Four Nations. And even though he's had a rough start here, I don't know if it's in question now.
Yeah, no, I don't think it ever was. Like the question was more, how bad does Jordan Binnington have to be to not make Team Canada? And I still don't think with an 873 save percentage, like I still don't think that that's even a question for this team. So it'd be unrealistic of us to not take Jordan Binnington. But to me, Logan Thompson has to be the starter. He's got a 924 save percentage. He's first in the NHL in goals saved above expected with 25.2 per money puck. Darcy Kemper's fifth, actually, with 16 goals saved above expected. So I'll give you the nod on that one. I like Kemper. He's won a cup before, can come in and has that big game experience, and he's also playing great right now. And Jordan Binnington.
That's a huge part, I think, right now is with how streaky goaltenders are. Who's playing great right now? I think can't be undersold.
Like, I think Logan Thompson should get the net and shouldn't give it away until proven otherwise. I would temper with the idea of Binnington being the second guy in terms of if Thompson, their first game is against the Czechs. Like, that's not an easy game to start the Olympics. Like, they're a very good team. If Logan Thompson lets in 3 goals on 8 shots to start that game, I think then you give it to Binnington and it's his net because he had it in Four Nations kind of thing. But I think Logan Thompson, the sample size of him being maybe the best goalie in the NHL this season is too big of a sample in terms of the last 3 months for me to overlook it. And going back to the last couple of years too, he's been awesome. So Logan Thompson, first in goals saved above expected, save percentage 924. He's been awesome. So he's my starter for Team Canada. Let's now zoom out and look at our full roster as we wrap this video. Thank you everyone for watching. I'm sure you're letting us know in the comments down below who your picks are and who we're leaving off of our rosters. But this is it. Let's look at the defense core and the goaltenders first. We've got Devon Toews, Cale Makar, Josh Morrissey, Shea Theodore, Thomas Harley, Drew Doughty, Matthew Scheifele, and then we debated Parayko and Chychrun. Goaltending, Thompson, Binnington, Kemper. They can only take 3. We debated Kemper and Blackwood a little bit, but I'd take Kemper. And then let's move up to the forward core where there's a lot of talent here. The top 12, Marner, McDavid, Reinhart. Don't get caught up on the line combos. Celebrini, McKinnon, Bedard, Marchand, Crosby, Point, Hagel, Suzuki, Wilson as our fourth line, and then down here, we debated Scheifele versus Wyatt Johnston, and then Mark Stone versus Seth Jarvis. Lyss, is this a gold medal winning team?
I think so, man. I think so. I love these players, and I just think that if this forward group can kind of get running early and start scoring some goals early in the tournament, and they start coming downhill at any team, even that American defense core that I know is going to be absolutely deadly, even though I feel like they're kind of cursed right now, and every single one of those players has missed time this year. But besides the point, I think that if this team is kind of firing on all cylinders, you basically have the best defenseman in the world on that American decor right now, and I don't even know if they're going to be able to handle it in the modern NHL. The best goal scorers are better than the best defensemen and the best goalies. That's just the way this kind of skill set works. And so I think that if these forwards start going, and I think that this is the best forward group in the tournament, I think this is a gold winning team. I think this is a gold medal winning team.
I think so too. I think Canada is absolutely loaded. The cap hit is so funny. I have way too many players, by the way. They're taking 14 forwards. They're taking 8 defensemen.
Yeah,
and
we
3
still do
goalies.
need to cut 2 forwards and a defenseman, but you know what?
But our rosters sit where they are. I would have Scheifele and Jarvis pending injury. Lyss would have Johnson and Stone. I'd have Parayko. She'd have Chikrin. And then I'd have Blackwood. She'd have Kemper. But the cap hit, $210 million. You think they're over the cap, Lyss?
I say they do it. I say they do it.
Matthew Scheifele is $975,000 per season, is really bringing down the average cap hit there.
And Connor Bedard's $950, and Matthew Celebrini is also chilling at a $975.
Yeah, they got some cap efficiency there with the ELCs.
Yeah,
for sure.
ELC efficiency. Who needs it? Right?
Yeah. Team Canada, clearly.
Winnipeg Jets could never.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's going to do it from us on today's video. Team Canada roster projection. Let us know your picks down below. And the games get started middle of February as the NHL goes on break. And Canada, like I said, will take on the Czechs in their first Olympic game to start the break. The team is going to be named New Year's Eve at night, so we see who Team Canada takes for their roster for the 2026 Olympics. From Lyss Houde, I'm Connor Hrabchak. Thanks for watching this video on the Winnipeg Sports Talk channel. We'll catch you next time, and happy holidays, everyone.